ask some tough questions for sure. You know, I was in. Have you ever heard of Jesse Itzler?
No,
You've never heard of him. You should look him up. You'd really like him.
Yeah.
Really like him. I was at a meeting last week called the Vision Source Exchange, and he was like the keynote speaker. And he started Marquis Jets, and his wife started Spanx.
Okay.
So he has like 10 things. So he gave this keynote, and he was like a VJ, like a VJ from MTV back in the day. Anyway, one of the things that he asked, and I'm going to ask you because I think you'll be able to have some sort of like honest assessment of it.
Sure.
I think most of us would either be too hard on ourselves or too generous on ourselves because we haven't reflected enough. But he said, would you recommend yourself as blank? So you could put it in as boss, middle management, husband, father, friend. So I'm going to ask you, would you recommend yourself as a father?
Oh man, you know, I think would I recommend myself as a father? That's a really good question. You know, as a father, my daughter's only 6, and so I don't know. Maybe if it's a scale, I would.
Come on.
Is it a yes or a no?
Yes or no?
I think yes. You know, I think I'm trying to really be intentional about teaching my daughter foundational skills that she can use to make decisions. You know, I realized in my life where I had issues was in the realm of decision making and not having the tools I needed to like make a decision in the moment. So like values and faith and friends that have similar values and similar faith, I think are things that I've tried to instill into her. So, you know, sort of not comparing myself to my dad, I would say, you know, I think I'm doing the right things and trying to prioritize time. You know,
Hello and welcome to the Chris World Podcast on iCode Media. Today I had a great conversation with Brandon Fleharty, who is in my F3 group, and we talked about the coming to the end of yourself. And it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to Brandon, and please enjoy our conversation. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. We've been providing myopia control treatments in our practice for years. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, Cooper Vision has received FDA approval of its innovative MySight one-day contact lens. This will be the cornerstone of a comprehensive myopia management approach to be offered by Cooper Vision. This daily wear, single-use contact lens is the first and only FDA-approved product clinically proven to slow the progression of myopia when initially prescribed for children 8 to 12 years old and when compared to children in the control group wearing a single vision one-day contact lens. Check out the show notes for all the specific prescribing details and to get more information about this lens and how you can begin to offer it in your practice.
My values are faith, relationships, integrity, service, and challenges. So and I've sort of written out, you know, how I use those to make decisions. And really, it's the way I prioritize my time is based on my wife, my daughter, friends, mentors, and then, you know, work for me is sort of that outer ring. It's kind of the F3 concentrica model. But I've noticed that at her age, she does want quantity time. She wants, you know, you think of love languages and that sort of model, and she wants quantity time. She wants quantity time. She wants quantity toys. She wants, you know, quantity everything.
More is always better.
And yeah, and I think that's okay when they're that age. Like I'm noticing like she's coming home from school in the public school system, and she's coming home and she's talking about conversations she's having with her friends, and she really is exhibiting, you know, love to other people, and that's really a skill we've been trying to teach her, you know, her whole life. So long answer.
Yes.
Of saying yes. I think.
Is there something that you do often that you would say no to, that you wouldn't recommend yourself as?
I'm not the best. And sorry if anybody that works with me that would listen to this, but I'm not the best people manager. Sometimes it's easy for me to say, look, if you're not willing to put in the work, I'm okay letting you fail. and I don't, if like, I'm happy to give advice and coaching and insight and tell you what I've learned, but I don't like micromanaging people. And when it gets to that point, I sometimes give up. I sometimes say, like, it's not worth it for me. And that, in sort of corporate America, managers are expected to, like, coach those people that, and so I think I'm not the best people manager. I've learned that in the last year and a half. It's not what I'm the best at.
Is there sort of a line, like, have you recognized, like, I'll do these things, X, Y, and Z, but once you get to this point, I'm pretty much done with you? Do you know where that line is for you?
Yeah, I think I will. It sort of is, there's some give and take, right? Because you've got to build trust with people, and some credibility so that they might take your advice. And so I think what I've noticed is when I sort of start giving somebody feedback, right? Hey, I noticed you do this thing and it has this impact. And in the future, let's try it this way. I gravitate towards the people that are willing to give my suggestion a try. They're willing to say, "Oh yeah, maybe you are right. Maybe I did do that," or and then they give things a try, and we can dialogue about maybe what to do better next time. But the people that just sort of blatantly disregard the feedback, I think it's sort of like, what's going on here? And so I try to work a little bit harder, but then you start noticing patterns of behavior and kind of blah blah blah, right? Is how, like, because my mind just goes to this world of, like, if you can't be accountable for yourself, I don't know what to tell you, because in my life and the struggles I've had, you go to a 12-step meeting, and I know not everything is 12-step, but you go to a 12-step meeting and they say, if you want what we have and you're willing to make the effort to get it. And so there is some effort involved, right? And I think it should apply to all areas of life. I mean, if you want a successful career, if you want to be able to keep your job, there are some steps you need to take. And I think too often, like, the micromanaging of people, it's like people not willing to do their part. And that kind of frustrates me a little bit.
Did you always, we haven't gotten to your story yet, your F3 story.
Sure.
But have you always had that mentality? Have you always had sort of like this work hard, kind of, you gotta show up, you gotta be diligent? Has that always been the case? And where did you learn that?
Yeah, it's interesting, kind of the connection between parenting and that sort of mindset. I, at an early age, was incentivized to get good grades by money. And I remember specifically a time, so I've always had a job. I started working when I was 13 at Brother Sebastian's, if anybody knows where that's at.
Brother Sebastian's, really?
Yeah.
My first job was, my first real job was Burger King. And then I got a job at Jack and Mary's. You know where Jack and Mary's is?
Yeah,
it's gone now.
Yeah.
They closed.
With the pandemic.
Yeah. Totally closed. But I would scrub chicken fat off of those metal pans with a steel wool pad.
Yeah.
And then they'd stick them in the that big kind of industrial washing machine or dishwasher, and they'd come out just blazing hot, and then you're still trying to scrub. And you know what that taught me? I don't want to do this job forever. It taught me, like,
if I want a different job,
I better work hard.
And for me, I have always been driven a little bit by acceptance and trying to get other people to like me. And so I remember a time in middle school, wanting, and this is such a ridiculous story now, but wanting, like, Abercrombie jeans. And I remember my dad.
That's where you went your wife, right?
Yeah, right. She was the cologne spray girl. No, she did work there though. Anyway, that's a different story. But I remember my dad taking me to go look at some jeans, and I remember him just being like, "I'm not paying $60-$70 for a pair of jeans." And I was like, "But Dad, I really want them." And he's like, "You know what, son? If you want to spend $60 on a pair of jeans, you need to find yourself a job." So that's exactly what I did. And I was a baller in middle school. I had Abercrombie jeans, then I moved on to, like, FUBU and Karl Kani, and I even had a buddy of mine and I had these.
Were you a West Side kid?
These chains, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
you had chains?
Yeah,
doesn't surprise me.
With a big dragon on it,
with a clock on it.
Yeah. It was no, but I think that mentality comes from sort of my parents instilling in me, if you work hard, you can get what you want, kind of deal. Now I will say that road comes to an end, because for me, what happens there is I start to think I can control the world around me
by working harder,
and ultimately, as you start getting introduced to faith and to Jesus and to how salvation works, in my opinion, like it's not necessarily because of me working harder, and that's really, I think, the last 10 or so years of my life have been spent trying to undo that sense of like desire to control, and it comes through in the little stuff, I think. So my kind of quick story, I'm a nurse by background. I struggled through college, loved to party, get high, really whatever was around. But I still succeeded. I was straight A's in high school, graduate with accommodations, like always, but I was so focused on being the life of the party. Went to college here in Omaha at UNO, had no idea what I wanted to do. And then ultimately ended up in nursing school at like age 25 and graduated from nursing school, and all throughout that time, I'd still been dating my wife, but still really trying to just like live these siloed versions of myself, right? Like I'm going to be this like, I'm going to know about science and healthcare and anatomy and as a nurse, and I'm going to be a strong Christian when I'm around my wife and her family, and then I'm going to party when I'm out on the weekends. And then I'm, like just always shifting between different versions of me to meet the needs of whoever I was around. And it led to a lot of dissatisfaction. I was a nurse for staff nurse for a couple years, got really burnt out and just kind of felt like, well, I went to school for so long and this sucks. And then I kind of migrated over into IT. And, over time, I think I just was never able to really impress people enough. And so, then we had our first child, and I remember thinking like, well, my wife loves her way more than she loves me. And I'm sort of like fading into the background here. And I think it was at that point I kind of started to get deeper into, staying up late and using, heavier drugs and, staying out till 3-4 in the morning. And
was it sort of like a middle finger? Like, I don't need you. I can be fine. Or
yeah, it was sort of like
just something else.
We've got money. I'm in school. I was getting a dual master's degree at the time, and I was in school, and she wasn't paying attention to what I was doing and didn't seem to really care. And it was just, we had this newborn, and it was kind of like, hey, screw it. I don't know what else to do. I'm so unsatisfied. And I felt better, right? Like that's the draw, is like I could numb the pain for a while, the pain of like not being good enough, or sort of this, like, I've done everything I know to do and I'm still not getting the, it's so selfish, but I'm still not getting the praise, the recognition, or the respect that I think I deserve. And ultimately, you sort of learn, like, I don't really deserve any sort of respect or praise or any of that, but it's just this, like, ego-driven sort of, from being taught, like, if I work really hard, then I'm going to get whatever I want, including people's respect and all of that. So,
but I'm a believer, so I think that's good perspective, because I still believe that, like I've said this, and maybe it's just naive, West Omaha growing up to be able to say this, but I think it's a fair statement to say there's probably no place else in the world that you can move so vertically in terms of income, right?
Sure.
Forget about socioeconomic, like social status, because I think, to your point, you can't buy respect from people. But if you work hard enough, I think you can make as much money as you want.
Right.
I think that's the case, right? There's certain things that you might have ceilings with, but for the most part, you can make enough money to buy most everything you need, for sure, and most of what you want.
Yeah.
So then there's sort of this limit, but then you can't buy, if what you want is respect, you can't buy that.
Yeah.
And you can't work yourself toward that.
Right.
I mean, you can work toward it, but it's not like I can't just work on you and be like, hey, Plague, gotta, I'm gonna show up, and the things that I would do to try to earn your respect wouldn't be necessarily like something I could just do. Like, I'm going to do this and you're going to get, no, I mean, it's earned, right? It's earned by continual things that you see me do, or that I know you see me do, or that you see me do that I don't know.
Right.
So how did you come to the end of yourself? So I will point this out because I love these sort of little nuggets that I get from people. And one nugget that I've gotten from you recently, probably over the last few months, is the idea of coming to the end of yourself. When did you start thinking about it like that? And kind of, I'll let you elaborate on the idea.
Yeah, I think it's probably not my original term. It's probably from Narcotics Anonymous or a 12-step group. But, ultimately, the timeline for me has always been fascinating. So I started F3 in July 21st or 20th of 2018. And then I got clean on August 12th. And so there was some overlap there if you're doing the math. And I think what happened was sort of some conviction from, I would say, from the Holy Spirit. I'm a believer in Jesus, and I had, feel like I was, what I used to do is I would intentionally get in an argument with my wife so that she would kick me out of the house, and I would always do this on like a Wednesday or Thursday night.
Oh, jeez.
So I would.
Did you know that you were doing this, or it just sort of happened?
This is reflecting back.
Okay.
But like I think it got to a point where it was intentional. And it was.
You're a lucky man. She put up with you.
Oh my gosh!
It's like through God's grace. I mean, I'm sure you think about that all the time.
If you wanted to hear a story of somebody being faithful and like really trusting in God, she's the one that we should be interviewing, because I don't know.
I'm going to interview her. I'm going to stalk her on Facebook like Khakis did.
Her story, man. I've always said that like God took all these stupid things that I did, and he created two amazing stories. And like, if there's ever a spouse or a wife that's struggling with a husband going through this, or even going through it themselves, I mean, she was just this rock. And what it did for her in terms of creating like this sense of boldness, where she felt like, if he's not going to lead our family, I need to really step up. And she just took on, kind of like Mama Bear, but like she just, she's stronger in her faith. She's bolder speaking out about her faith. She's developed some strong relationships with other Christian women. I mean, it like accelerated all of these things that, had it been left up to my plans, I'd still be working on a lot of them. So to answer your question though, I think, what happened was I would get in an argument so I could I wanted to go stay in a hotel on the weekend and just party. And I was doing that, and I came home one Saturday or Sunday morning, and my daughter was 3, and she was talking, and she says, "Dad, I miss you. I don't like that you had to work all weekend." And I just remember thinking, like, just being convicted in that moment of like, this is not right. It just the tension between like the Holy Spirit and the world. I could just like feel that inside of me. And it wasn't probably till another, couple times of using and just being like, just kind of having this feeling of like, what am I doing? You almost like can see your life from an outsider's perspective, and kind of like come to this realization that your life's a mess and it's unmanageable. And so finally getting to the point where like all of my best ideas failed. Like all of the things that I thought I needed to do to get what I wanted just had failed. And so I kind of went and talked to my wife, and like, what do we need to do? Like, what needs to happen to make this work? And it was like, you've got to go to an NA meeting like tonight. Like, you need to go like tonight. And so I went, and I just remember that group being so welcoming, and I also remember not being willing to admit that I had a problem. I sort of felt like, you guys are crazy. I got 2 master's degrees. I'm well educated. I'm successful, and my only problem is my wife. That's what I thought. But it turns out that just I didn't have a good framework to guide those decisions, and so I thought I was doing everything to control. But ultimately, the thing I wasn't doing was surrendering to God's will and realizing that, like, I say I believe in God. Why don't I trust His plan for my life? And I just said, I'd always like said what Christians say, but I never really felt or believed really in my core what Christians believe until sort of that moment, I guess. But
do you think there's people that root against you, that know your story and are like, this asshole, I can't believe he's
I hope there are. That's what keeps me motivated, man. I see people that I know are still getting high, and I got to be careful because
no, you're walking a line always, right?
I tend to judge a little bit, but I have come to the realization that not everybody that drinks is an alcoholic, and not everybody that apparently there's this category of people, and in NA we call them normies, but they're people that can use
Joe Rogan.
They can use drugs successfully. I don't know. That's not a thing in my world. I can't. And maybe you can. Maybe some people can.
So I got a buddy that, man, I really, so you remind me a lot of him. He was my best friend growing up, and people get you through tough times, like just, tough times in the sense of, like maybe they're not like, the times like you're describing, but as you're growing up and you're kind of learning who you are, you got to have people in your life that are your peers that can kind of, like you're talking about, your buddies with your chains, right? Like they got you through a period.
Yeah.
And so he, you remind me a lot of him, and I just hope that at some point he's ready for that sort of shift.
Yeah.
And I guess you just got to be there.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's kind of what you hear about. So the end of yourself is, to me, is sort of the same as like you hit rock bottom, or you get to this place where you realize, like, I can't do it anymore on my own. And then you sort of learn, like, I don't have to. And then the thing I still don't understand how it works, but this is why I believe in God, because I need a really big God, because I've got really big problems. But somehow, all of the things I was searching for and trying to control, so the respect, the acceptance, the like love, friendship, all of those things that money can't buy, and I couldn't figure out how to get. And I pursued everything. Like, if you look at my my sort of professional track record, like just the continuous pursuit of more initials behind my name or certifications, right? I've got
with degrees,
2 master's degrees. I'm PMP certified. I'm board certified in nursing informatics. I've got a HIM certification. I mean, if there's a credential or a certification you can get, there was a point in my life where I thought, that's what I need. When I get that, then people are going to respect me. And it never happened. It was like, well, you just passed another test. Great. Good for you. And I don't need that, and so I just remember, like, always pursuing that, and ultimately the thing that earned me what I wanted is really when I share my story of, like, just pure failure and like darkness, really. And I think what I found through F3's kind of given me a platform to share that and really deal with sort of the internal struggle between, like, I know I've gone through this thing, and I know that other people might be going through the thing, but I'm ashamed, and so I don't want to really share it because I could be judged for it, or I could. But what I've noticed is the more I share, the more God uses it, and the more, like, respect and all of that stuff that I wanted, that I get. And so I think it's just you continuing to share the story and letting Him figure out how it works out. So, like, before this time sitting down with you, I'm like, how much do I share, right? I mean, this is, and
have you not shared anything on the gloom?
Well, this is an international podcast.
Yeah, yours is going to get there.
No, I haven't necessarily, and but you that comes to your mind. You're like, well, do I share? What if somebody I work with listens to it? What if they start doing the math and they realize like I was on their team as a coworker when I was using.
Do you not want me to share your real name?
So the more I thought about it, I don't really care because God's going to do what He's going to do with the story, and it's really a story of His love and grace and mercy, and I just get to be a part of it. So like, if somebody from my work were to listen and come to me and say, "Hey, you were getting high and I was on your team," you know what I was, and man, how scary that I was able to hide it from you. And so maybe let's take some time and think about the other people around us that might need help. I think it's interesting because you think about coming to the end of yourself. How do you help somebody? I've had other friends that are struggling with addiction, and a lot of addicts don't want help. And I remember I'm laughing because sometimes the people who offer you help, you push them away, and then you realize like if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have changed. So I think the thing to do to help is really to stand up for and confront your friends. In F3 we'd call it correction or exhortation. But if you've got a friend or somebody that's using, I think you need to let them know that, hey, that's something that I think your life would be better without, and then sort of let them work through that conviction and whatever. I think I had a few friends that offered to take me to rehab, and my excuse was like,
did you ever have to go physically to rehab?
No,
you could do it all through NA.
Yeah, we did a lot of counseling. Marriage counseling was huge. And I think what we learned, it's like accountability. So that was really hard. Like, I'm accountable for all of my actions and all of the things that happened during that. So one of the big struggles in our marriage today is like, we're still rebuilding trust. And that's unfortunately, whether I like it or not, because of all the betrayal on my end. And so like, if there's a thing that I want to go and do, and my wife is sort of like on the edge of like, I don't know if I trust you in that situation, I don't have the right to get mad about it because I created that sort of lack of trust on her end, and so learning that was a challenge for me because I sort of wanted to be like, well, I'm healed, I'm better.
Here I am. Yeah. I'm fine, so accept it.
Yeah. The other thing I guess that has been really cool for me that I think is just as you share your story, you start to other guys come out of the woodwork and start saying, "Me too." And they say, "Me too, I need help. I don't know how to fix it." Or they say, "Me too, here's been my journey. Me too, here's where I'm headed." And it's crazy. I got a phone call yesterday from somebody in F3, and they just said, "Hey, I was on a business call, and this guy started talking about a sober living community, and I heard him say that, and I thought of your name, and there's some fitness elements, and I want to connect you with this guy." And I just had this moment of like, wow, like never in my wildest dreams would I have thought I got to be a part of that, something like that, to help other guys get back on their feet. And the irony of all of this is my master's, my MHA thesis was developing a mobile app to help recovering addicts. And at the time, I was developing that for other people, for those people. And so it's almost just like God's sense of humor in a way, and most people don't think addiction's funny, but I think God does some amazing things through addicts or people that have suffered in that way.
It's interesting you bring that up because there's somebody I was talking to recently that uses the argument, one of the hardest things for people who, one of the hardest kind of problems with God, right, that people will cite is the problem of evil. But then there's been really some interesting people who've articulated the other way, where the problem of evil is actually a justification for God.
Right.
To your point, right? He allows you to do all this other stuff because he can do so much greater with it.
Right. Well, and I think to a certain extent, that's free will. I would say, like, I had never. We've made it so easy in this country to be like a, coffee cup Christian, or I don't know what you want to call it, but it's really, really easy for me to go to a church, participate in all the things, and look like a Christian on the outside, but not really have that transformation of my heart on the inside. And I did that forever. I mean, the only reason I went to church in the first place was because I had a buddy of mine who we had a sleepover in high school. People stayed the night at his house, and the deal was if you stay at our house, you go to church on Sunday. I went to church, and my wife was there, and she's hot, and I kept going back to church. And that was my deal. I was like, well, I'm going to go to church. And you see it in your kids, right? I mean, my 6-year-old is a mastermind manipulator. And so we learned that so early. And so I figured I can manipulate this girl to liking me, and I know how to do it. I'm going to be interested in the things she's interested in. And so, but that didn't require me to actually adopt those beliefs. So then for the longest time, it was sort of like, this is what we do because I want to be with her. And so if I want to be with her, this is what I do. And then sort of over time, you kind of, and I would just, looking back, God was pursuing me. Like from that time on, and even before that, it's like the spiritual battle that we don't see. I mean, other parts of my story, and I don't know. We'll see how many listens you get. Maybe I will write this book someday. But
yeah, you should.
In 6th grade, I started using in 6th grade and broke into my elementary school. That was the winter storm of '97. I got in trouble for making counterfeit money in middle school.
No, you didn't get in trouble. You got arrested.
Well, not really.
No, not really.
No, not really. Because it was too young. The CIA, they told us it was terrible money, and some other people
do a better job next time.
Yeah, it was. They were like, make our job harder. Yeah. And then we got. I did some stuff in high school. Just getting in trouble, kind of odds and ends, and then was arrested in college and spent a couple nights in jail. That was for stealing wood from a construction site. But ultimately you go and you sit in a meeting with people who, like, they had to get the end of themselves, their bottom. They took it a step further, and they completely destroyed their family. They completely lost their job. They're coming out of they just kept going down that path. And so for me, it was sort of like I got to the end of myself, but I got there quicker because of all the other people around me that I got to learn from, that were saying, here's where I went. Like, I took it even further, and it led to this road. And I remember sitting in some of my earlier NA meetings just thinking, like, if I don't, God's not going to stop pursuing you. And so if I decide, like, I want to keep going my own way, he might allow that. He might allow me to, quit my job and sort of quit my family and move out to California and keep using. And he may even let me have a successful job for a short run out there. But I sort of had to make a decision that I wasn't interested in seeing where that led me, because there is a real risk of death and injury with drug use, So anyway, I don't know. I can't remember if that answered your question or not. But I'm just so grateful today. I get the chance to wake up, and even in the moments, I had a funny thing happen. Because now I'm still an addict. I still think like a drug addict, right? I still try to control everything, and I still get pissed off when I can. But the only difference is when I get pissed, I can't numb those feelings with drugs or alcohol. And so this is a funny thing to kind of full circle. So the other night, I'm out mowing at this new property we bought, and I'm a terrible property owner. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And so I mow, and I run the mower over this huge log. Gets jammed in the mower, and I'm trying to get it out. Spent about an hour and a half, and I'm just furious. I'm ready to start punching and kicking the mower. And my daughter comes over and she goes, "Dad, you look a little frustrated. Have you tried counting to 10?" And so you in that moment, you just have to realize, like, I need to step away, set an example for my child, and take all of the stuff that God has taught me and find a way to teach her the right response in these moments. And so it was just this like really cool thing of like, and then she's like, well, Dad, I have an idea. Let me get the rule book. And she goes into the garage where we're storing all this stuff, and she grabs it's the Bible in a Year devotional. And so I just sort of like those little sort of messages from him of like, don't forget about the rule book. Don't forget about my word that I've given to you as this guide. And I used to, like, the Bible was something I always read because I thought my wife thought it was cool and would love me more. But like now I read it to have a relationship with God, and he is just continuing to change me. And I think it's just amazing to be on this side of the journey and look back and sort of realize like all of that stuff happened for a reason, and it sort of had to happen to accelerate like my ability to even know him and let him love me. You know, it sort of always had a mentality of like, I believe in you, God, and I'm okay with you helping me when I can't figure it out on my own, but I'm pretty sure I got it figured out. You know, that was always my mentality. And now I start my day with everything that happens is out of my control. Show me where you want me to go, and you do what you do best and lead, and I'll do what I'm learning how to do, which is follow.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
The end of yourself starts in the gloom.
Yeah.
So tell us really quickly, I'll be respectful of your time because you told me you had a time certain. So
yeah.
Your podcast, your F3 podcast is called, and then you better spell it because you spelled it horribly.
It's called, I'm not a marketing guy or a PR guy. It's called The Gloom. So it's the, and then GLUE-OOM and
horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. We should have consulted you before. You know, I just realized that this was my story, and I think it's really impactful, right? Because I'm selfish and arrogant, and I have a big ego. But what I also realized through F3 and just hearing other guys' COTs and with just some of the growth in Omaha, like everybody's story is impactful, and you just don't know who it's going to impact. And so to me, it was sort of like trying to bridge the gap between like all of these amazing men and their stories and like guys that maybe haven't heard it yet. And so I think that's really the goal with The Gloom, is like, how do we get guys a platform to sort of tell what their story's been like and get it out to other guys that maybe don't even know who they are. It's been kind of cool to just, you know, get a text message every now and then that it's like, hey, I listened to so-and-so's podcast, and do you have their phone number? I'd love to reach out to them. You know, just helping to build those relationships. I totally believe like God's going to put people in your life that can help you get to where he wants you to go. And sometimes you haven't even met those people yet. And so I think it's just an effort to do that. It's also kind of fun, just to do something, you know, creative in the creative space. So I think, you know, we'll see how long we keep it going. We got so many guys that we need to interview that just have amazing stories. And so it's like, we've got enough interviewees, but as you know, it's sort of a scheduling nightmare trying to coordinate, but it's all good, man. It's been fun. And Pony Express has been somebody that, you know, you meet these people and they ask you tough questions. They ask you questions like, well, does that bother you when I drink around you? Or they ask you questions like, hey, how are you doing? Like, does your anniversary trigger weird feelings? Or like, does your, you know, sobriety date trigger weird feelings? Or, you know, and I think one of the best questions somebody ever asked me, and I reflect on this most mornings, is what lies are you believing today? What things about yourself or others are you believing that aren't true? And I think the biggest one I believe regularly is like that I'm not good enough. And so just you know, realizing
you're not good enough for.
I don't even
for
know.
Yourself
for myself. Yeah, I don't even know. And that's kind of where, you know, Pony and I have joked. You know, sometimes like, okay, so like think of that thing that you're sort of like, you know, the if I get this, then and just imagine like, okay, so now you've got all the money in the world. Now what are you going to do? And like, you're still not happy at the end of any of those things. Like it just, you know, it just doesn't doesn't fulfill you the way that I believe God does. And to me, like, I used to say that, but not feel it or believe it. And like, now I know, like, I can tell you on the end of a long day where I have tried to control it, I know what that feels like compared to like the end of a long day that I've let God control. And it's just two totally different feelings. And so, just try to be self-aware of that, and then stop believing the lie, realizing that like there is a strategy, there's a power that's working against us as men that has a strategy to separate us from other people and to separate us from God. And you look at, the world we're living in now, it's these small offenses, somebody says one word and all of a sudden we hate that person or we don't like that person. And the devil loves seeing that. He loves to be able to say, like, I've separated those people and I've separated these people. And, I guess to me, like, the testimony to my wife is like, if there's one relationship that God says should mimic the church, it's your relationship with your spouse. And, that's the one the devil's going after the hardest. Like, he wants anybody that's got a marriage centered on Christ, like, the devil wants to just tear that apart. And I don't know how she did it. I don't know, like, she would have been totally justified by, like, her family would have supported her. Everybody, I mean, the church, like, she would have had full support to leave me and just let me do my thing. And she just believed in, the sanctity of marriage, and sort of believed in, like, I don't know how, but I do believe God's going to work through this. And it's amazing today. I just celebrated my 3-year sobriety or clean date. And she wrote me this card, and it's sort of amazing to, like, I can lead my family today.
Yeah.
And
she had to lead before.
Oh yeah. And she's like happy to let me lead now because she's seen this transformation, which is what I wanted in the first place. And now I don't necessarily feel worthy. But so it's like that. Anyway, I could go on for hours.
No, I got actually a really interesting follow-up question, but I'm not going to ask you yet because I'm going to hold on to it for maybe the next time we do this. But let's take this out in the normal name-orama. I'll let you start.
Sure. Brandon Fleharty, 35, The Plague.
The Plague. Christopher Wolf, 40, Cataracts.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for doing this, man. It's great.
This is fun.